Well, as everyone knows, in the last year or so, it's become very clear that the Democrat Party, they have really embraced the more radical extreme wing of their party, which is saying a lot because already the Democrat Party, they were far left on a lot of issues, but by some miracle in 2026, their base has gotten even crazier, and now they're electing even further left nutcases across the board, not just in one primary. We're talking about dozens of primaries that long serving Democrats get primaried out. And if they do win, if there are some that did hold on, they barely win. And a lot of other ones, they retired knowing they were getting forced out anyways. So this problem, it is much worse than people expect. And Axios, they just released an article detailing just how bad this really is for the Democrat Party. Because, like I said, we're not talking about a single primary in like New York City. We're talking about dozens across the board. House Democrats who have comfortably held their seats for decades are suddenly finding their ground shifting beneath their feet as primary voters revolt against a party's old guard, which to me is just crazy when you think about it for 5 minutes. Guys, the Democrat Party, even the quote unquote moderate ones, are already fairly far left leaning. Even the moderate Democrats, they vote in line on like 90% of the issues. Yes, once in a while, you might see a more moderate Democrat like Perez or Golden. They might vote against the Democrats on like gun control. And most of the time, that's because they're in like a Trump plus 10 seat or Trump plus 5. That's what's wild about this. The Democrat Party, in large part, they vote in line on everything. But the Democrat base, they're getting so radical, they're getting so batshit crazy. Even being in line on 95% of the issues is not enough. You have to be 100% in line on every issue. If you're even off by 0.01%, like the Democrat in Colorado was, who was a progressive, by the way, sorry, you gotta go. That is how crazy this base is getting. The anti establishment revolution that has swept the Democrat primaries this year is poised to drastically alter the makeup of the party caucus and Congress as a whole. And that's an understatement. And I know they already have people like AOC, Omar, Tlaib. They're already in the House. I get that. But guys, it is so crazy what's happening in 2026 that the Democrats being elected now, these radical nutcases, they make AOC look like a moderate in comparison. Of course, she's not a moderate, but that is how insane some of these people are. That's why this is a big deal. We're not talking about a single primary or nutcase one. It's dozens of these people winning. Congressman John Larson of Connecticut became the latest victim of this trend. The 78-year-old lost his primary by more than 20 points. The 47-year-old former Hartford mayor, Luke Ronan. And to be fair, it wasn't just because he wasn't far left enough. He had some health issues. He is getting up there in age. And that is another issue in 2026 for a lot of Democrats. It just simply a lot of these people are getting older. That is true, but that's the exception, not the rule. Most of the time, even the older Democrats, they're not losing because of age. They're losing because, according to the average voter, they're not far left enough. And Larson, he got replaced with yet again another nutcase. Not as bad as the ones elected in like New York City or Colorado, but still, it is another radical person that won, not a moderate or even a generic Democrat. It's another fairly left leaning person. Larson is one of the 7 House Democrats who lost their primaries this year, 5 of whom are past retirement age. But unlike Larson, these Democrats, outside of maybe Al Green, and that's because of redistricting, they didn't lose because, oh, they're getting so old. Maybe partially, but they're not like 85 years old. Like, for example, the Get in Colorado, she's not even 70, she's 69, which, yeah, that is above the retirement age. But for Congress, that's not really that old. The real reason she lost was, you guessed it, she was in line on only 99.9% of the issues. They forced out this Democrat because of Israel. She disagreed with these people on one issue. It was like one or two issues. And even though she's been there for a while, a consistent vote on it, they forced her out. Same to these other people. It's all over the dumbest of issues. We're not talking about like they support like to get supported um mass deportations, which of course is common sense, but for Democrats, no, that's far right policy. It's nothing like that. It's not like, oh, she's against gun control. No, it's because she was, relatively speaking, slightly pro Israel. Seriously, that is why you're forcing these people out. It is just absurd that we're picking nutcases because of Israel. But the sad part is, even if it wasn't for that one issue, there's a good chance that these people would still be winning their primaries because the average Democrat at this point, they agree with what these people are saying on the economy, on housing, immigration, these radical policies, they agree with them on. That's what's scary about this. Okay, the war in Israel gets settled. It doesn't really matter. They move on to a different issue. The same thing's going to happen. That's why this is a much bigger problem for Democrats than I think people think it is. No matter what they do, okay, they become far left on the war in Israel. They become super pro Palestine or whatever. Okay, they're just going to move on to data centers or they're going to move on to some nonsensical policy belief because their base, they believe this crap. That's what's just terrifying about it. That's why all these Democrats, they're going to lose no matter what. They're going to lose no matter what happens because they're getting crazier. And I think come 28, things are going to be even worse for Dems. This is just the starting point. It's clear throughout the year, the momentum for these candidates, they've picked up momentum in the last couple of months. Yes, they've lost a couple races, like in Wisconsin. They barely won in Michigan, but those were statewide races. Even then, they did, considering how crazy they are, they still did, relatively speaking, good compared to what they were doing 10 years ago. 10 years ago, these candidates, they would have taken sixth place. He got 5% of the vote, if that. Now, they're winning statewide races for not just safe Democrat seats, but in competitive states like Michigan, or they're barely losing the governorship like in Wisconsin. That is a very noteworthy thing. And it's just going to keep getting worse. This year alone has broken so many records. But after 26, it is going to get a lot worse. And Hakeem Jeffries, he might not even have a job come 2027. He may not be the speaker if Democrats win. I know that sounds crazy. Here's a problem for him. Already, a large chunk of the conference is saying, we will not vote for Hakeem Jeffries. And if Democrats don't get a large enough majority, there's a chance he does not become speaker. But then you factor in, hey, wait a second here. You're electing a lot of these nutcases who will agree Hakeem Jeffries cannot be speaker. So it's not just going to be the rank and file Dems. There's a chance even Hakeem Jeffries gets forced out. And that's going to cause a shit show and a half because now you're going to have the Black Caucus pissed off that their guy got forced out in that scenario. They won't have the votes for speaker. It would become a glorious shit show. Does it for sure happen? I don't think so. But the chances of that actually happening, it goes up every single day. The more these people win their primaries, the less likely it becomes for Hakeem Jeffries to be speaker or these other people in leadership that have their job, which is insane to think about. Seriously, Hakeem Jeffries isn't far left enough. You could argue it's because he's not a really good leader and it's kind of been a mess. That's true. But still, you would think that Hakeem Jeffries, he would be fine for the majority of Democrats, but no, because they disagree on like Israel and because he's kind of a shitty leader, he has to go. And there's a chance come 28, he may get primaried out. I know that seems crazy to say, but at this point, If all these candidates are winning now, and we're not even to the peak of their power yet, it's just going to keep going up every single day. And these older Democrats, they're either just going to resign, retire, or lose their primaries in the next couple of years. If they're not far left enough, if they're not in line on every single issue, it doesn't matter what it is. They have to agree with the most batshit crazy policies. If they don't, they get forced out. And even then, at this point, with how crazy these people are getting, it may not even be enough. The Democrat Party, they're entering this purity spiral that thankfully the GOP, they're not dealing with that just yet. There's still a chance they do. But right now, Democrats better be careful. Yeah, some of their establishment picks did win, like in Crowley in Wisconsin, but he barely won. They outspent Hahn by a lot of money. That was a Hail Mary. It barely worked. And even then, he didn't even get 40% of the vote. It's going to get pretty bad. In the next couple of years, it's going to get pretty bad. And as these people gain more and more power, they're going to get more influence, and they're going to keep pushing the party further to the left. And that's not good, because already they agree with some crazy shit. Can you imagine in 5 years if they consistently move further and further to the left? The AOC becomes the center-left Democrat. That's what they're trying to do. That is how crazy it's going to get. They may have AOC as the center-left Democrat of the party, which, think about that for a second. Imagine saying that 5 years ago, that AOC in a couple of years, compared to how radical the party has gotten, could actually be seen as the moderate, could be seen as the establishment pick. Wow, that is not good. But right now, with all these people losing, it's just a snowball effect. It's going to get worse. It starts small, but now you're up to like 8 people that got primaried out. A bunch of others also retired, and they got replaced by, again, nutcases. This could get very bad in the next couple of years for Dems. But anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.